I guess the key takeaways are, especially for multinational companies, the real challenge is around managing the different stakeholders, the social contract that companies have now with communities and society, and mapping out those different stakeholders, and then that's amplified and magnified with the use of digital communications, which means that you have global communications, you have instant communications, it's always on, it's 24/7, so it's extremely challenging right now. The advent of social media is definitely disrupting the marketing as well as the communication process, no question about that. It's given rise to citizenship journalism, it's given rise to the fragmentation of media, it's given rise to 24/7 response. So in response to that, the brand, i.e. the company, needs to be equally agile, equally always on, equally listening, etc., etc. But it has also given rise to opportunities for brands. Number one, it's an opportunity to listen. It's an opportunity to hear directly from users of your products or services. It's also an opportunity, if you plan it correctly, in order to engage with those people, to create alliances with those communities. Well, certainly branded content, branded journalism, whatever you want to call it, but basically brands as publishers is definitely becoming more popular. I think there are a number of reasons for that, which is a decline in the readership and circulation and the number of journalists that are available. And brands have now got a platform through the internet that they can publish. The kind of things that I'd be looking at were, what is the genuine insight into your customer? Not your products or services, but what is the genuine insight into your customer that is creating that story, that is creating that compelling human interest story that might be about your employees, that might be about your customers' use of your products and services, but really look for insights in which to engage them completely.
I think in a multi-stakeholder, multi-media age, there are several challenges. Obviously, you're looking at the challenge of multiple markets that have very different needs and very different issues. You're also looking at issues that can travel at the speed of a tweet, and it's very, very difficult to control that. I think the challenge for organisations is to understand that, in fact, reputations cannot be managed globally. There's no such thing as a global reputation. And in fact, organisations and companies really need to look at how they manage reputations from a local perspective, tapping into local issues and understanding local risks that can change over time. Scenario planning is one of the key things that needs to be done in terms of preparation, and it's not just about doing the big manual that is very popular, has been very popular in terms of preparing the crisis manual. It's really understanding and in simple terms what the risk is to an organisation in that market, and being able to prepare for it in a way that answers the question, why should people care about what you say? And I think that that involves not only auditing what the situation is, but really practicing the response as well, because as I said, media is a completely different ballgame now, and it requires a different type of management. I think companies need to aspire to do the right thing all the time. Aristotle said, you are what you do, and certainly consumers are judging companies by what they do rather than what they say. In terms of how they achieve that, a really good starting point is having very clear principles in place, operating principles that articulate the values that you expect everyone to uphold. And of course, leadership. Leaders who actually walk the talk and who live and uphold the values and are seen to do that in every single action they take is incredibly important.
One of the things that we heard about today was the fact that so many people have a different idea about who is important to them as a stakeholder and how much influence those individual stakeholders have on reputation. And yet we also recognize that it isn't about the amount of influence that they have. If they have influence, they have opportunity, and that opportunity is what one has to be prepared for. I think it was also quite interesting for us to understand and to really recognize, and I think the crowd recognized it as well, that these tools that some people are very afraid of, the idea that shareholders have all these different social media tools and citizen journalism, etc., those very tools are the ones that can be turned around and used to tell a story and a perspective from a company, from an organization. If you utilize those tools and you understand how to make your storytelling fit for what your audience needs are, if you're telling a story for the sake of yourself without an idea as to what your audience is looking for, you won't be successful. they'll walk away from the story. Just like anyone can put down a book, turn off a DVD, shut down the computer. You have to keep an interest, and that interest means that you are delivering a story that the reader, that the viewer finds of value. If you find that sweet spot, then you have been successful in publishing.
For global companies, particularly MNCs, one of the things that is new and changing rapidly in the risk environment is geostrategic risk. I guess at the end of the day, we all think about country risk, but very few people think about geostrategic risk. If you look at the experience that global MNCs have had, for example, those that are US-based MNCs in Russia and in China this year, where a nationalist agenda has literally had an impact on their license to operate, it actually takes the idea of risk management into an entirely new sphere. Companies simply don't think through from a stakeholder perspective what could go wrong, and they actually don't put themselves in the shoes of the community more widely and ask the question, why should they actually believe us? Where are their real interests? So often scenario planning happens with companies not really being able to get to grips with the unexpected.